Hello and a very warm welcome to Middle East Matters. Coming up in the show, transported in livestock carriers, hundreds of Syrian refugees are brought ashore in Italy. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas asks to join the International Criminal Court. Israel lashes back by withholding funds. And lavish law enforcement in Dubai. Police officers get a whole new look with high-tech glasses. Transported in livestock ships, hundreds of Syrian refugees were towed to shore in Italy after smugglers abandoned ship. The refugees were crowded onto the boat and endured days without food and water in high seas. Oliver Farry has the details.
The Yazidine lies finally in dock, the blankets of its migrant passengers strewn across the deck, but you need to go inside to get a proper look at the terrible conditions on board. The Yazidine is equipped to transport cattle, with cages open to the outside. 360 people crowded in here in the cold and wet. Personal belongings lie abandoned. A stairwell is littered with rubbish. Downstairs, the hold, where many of the travellers huddled in darkness. The crew abandoned ship mid-sea, leaving the bridge ransacked. Arriving in the south of Italy on Friday night, the migrants were tired but relieved. The passengers, all from Syria, were finally on dry land. The evacuation took more than 3 hours, the end of an ordeal.
How was the trip?
It's very difficult. From 11 days.
11 days?
From 11 days.
Families travelling together, many of them with babies.
These people have gone 5 days without eating, without any electricity. It was really grueling.
Many passengers say they boarded in Mersin in Turkey. Human traffickers had organised the trip at a cost of several $1,000s each.
I paid $3,000.
I paid $7,000.
Italian authorities have now taken the migrants to be housed in welcome centres spread throughout the country.
The UN says over 160,000 refugees arrived into Italy last year. The vast majority of Syrians, however, ran across the nearest borders seeking safety. Over 1.1 million are registered in Lebanon. The influx put the country's resources under serious strain, and since Monday, visa restrictions have been imposed, limiting the time Syrians can stay and indeed who can enter. While across another of Syria's borders, there's a similar stream of people. The UN estimates that 600,000 Syrian refugees are living in Jordan, 1 million according to national figures. Gigantic tent towns sprung up in the desert, but the vast majority were makeshift shelters that were not authorised and which police have now started to tear down. Our reporters send us this report.
This Syrian refugee is in shock.
شوف هذاك حمل الباص هذاك حمل هاي والله العظيم ومكة والله يا ربي أنت موجود يا ربي ليش هيك
350 refugees were living here on this barren field north of Jordan, only a few hundred meters away from the Syrian border. But their temporary huts have been demolished. They only had a few minutes to try and salvage the little belongings they still owned. The police arrived at dawn aboard 2 buses. Indeed, Jordanian authorities are now clamping down on such makeshift refugee settlements. Hundreds are being dismantled throughout the kingdom.
These people are setting up camps anywhere, and we can't manage them. Our citizens have been complaining about it and about the disorder they've been causing.
Jordan's official stance is that it's closing these make-do camps because of public health concerns. But the main objective is to stem what's become a major refugee crisis. These Syrians are one of the very first families who are being driven under heavy police escort to a brand new United Nations refugee camp. In the middle of the desert, Azraq camp. 10,000 shelter units surrounded by a giant fence. Built in April, most of these constructions are still empty. We meet with one of the families who were forced to come and live here. Every day, Ali will be given €4 worth of food vouchers. Before coming to this camp, he used to make ends meet as an undocumented worker here in Jordan.
We're farmers. We're not used to places like this, being caged like that in the middle of the desert. I want to go away. They put us in here not telling us what would happen next, so I have no idea what will happen to us now.
The international community paid $40 million to build this giant refugee camp with a capacity of 130,000 people. impossible. But when Jordan signed an agreement with the UN, they made it clear camps were to be the only places where Syrians seeking refuge in the kingdom should be living.
One of the conditions that Jordan had when it opened its borders to the refugees, particularly in 2012, was that all new refugees would go to the camps. So we've invested tens of millions of dollars there to try and make it as habitable, and we will be looking at more and more refugees arriving as the government enforces a policy.
But most Syrian refugees are fleeing these camps in an attempt to lead a normal life again in small cities across Jordan. There are several thousand Syrian refugees hiding in rented homes, often living in unsanitary conditions, like here. The monthly rent for this former sheep pen turned apartment is 350 euros. This family depends on its men to earn money and cover these expenses. But Marwa's husband was recently arrested and forcibly returned to Syria. Marwa had had no news from her husband until today. Azad, the husband, is currently hiding in an area controlled by the Islamic State organization, with 10 other refugees who were also deported from Jordan.
We've been kicked out of Jordan without any money. My pockets are empty. We now have to beg people for money and ask them if they can hide us in their homes. When we're out in the open, we have to hide from trench to trench. There are airplanes and bombings in the area. I'm terrified.
Whether the Islamic State organization or the Syrian regime, they both capture people and make them disappear. Prisoners are forced to work for them or else they get killed.
Jordanian authorities deny these claims that they're forcibly returning refugees to war-torn Syria. But according to a report recently published by Human Rights Watch, Marwa's husband's story is not an isolated one.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has asked to join the International Criminal Court, a move that sent out a strong message but could have cost him dearly. If the ICC ratifies the request, it opens the way for war crime charges to be brought against Israel. Outraged, Israel has responded by withholding some $120 million in tax and customs receipts from its neighbours. Ketevan Gorgistani has the story.
It's a brand new weapon for the Palestinians. After months of dithering and political pressure, Mahmoud Abbas has finally followed through on a long-promised threat to join the International Criminal Court.
As you know, the whole region is in flames because of many conflicts. To end this, we need to solve the conflict between Palestinians and Israelis through international law.
The goal is to bring war crimes charges against Israel, whether over last summer's war in Gaza or the Israeli settlements in the West Bank.
Israel's being criticized for several of its actions. It never signed the Geneva Conventions regarding humanitarian issues, so it believes it's not bound by them. But if Palestine ratifies the ICC statute, all of these acts will become punishable if they're committed on Palestinian territory.
But Israel isn't willing to recognize the authority of the International Court. For Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, things are clear. Palestine is not a state, and therefore it cannot join the ICC.
We expect the International Criminal Court to dismiss the Palestinian Authority's request because the Palestinian Authority is not a state, it's an entity that is allied with the terrorist organization Hamas, which commits war crimes.
In November 2012, the Palestinians were granted non-member observer state status at the United Nations, a status that allows them to join the ICC. For some experts, it could also change the situation in the region.
You would have a legal point of view that's neutral and which could help diplomatic and military efforts in finding a way out of the conflict. But let's not be naive. Justice won't magically solve everything, but it can help bring elements of dissuasion.
UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon will review the request and notify ICC members within 60 days. Joining the court is one thing, but convincing it to take on a case will be harder. Since its creation 12 years ago, the ICC has opened only 9 investigations, all of them relating to crimes committed in Africa.
Lamborghinis, Ferraris, not always the first brands you think of when you think of a police car, unless perhaps if you're from Dubai, where lavish law enforcement is no new thing. Officers there have now been given expensive glasses to keep an even closer eye on crime. Josh Fardy explains.
A fleet of supercars, just a normal patrol for the Dubai police. Officers here have access to vast resources. Naria Al-Zarouni says she loves her job and that the car plays a big role in that.
Maybe everybody think, oh, there is police car, they will hate the police car, but our police cars, everybody, he hope just to stop this car and take a photo with this car.
These luxury patrol cars don't often get involved in difficult police work, however. Rather, they're mostly positioned in tourist areas.
It's amazing, actually. Yeah, it's very amazing. Never seen it before. I don't know why they need to have it, but it's good.
Even traffic police are equipped with the latest technology.
Take a picture. Dubai police.
This car doesn't have the right to park here, so the infraction is recorded straight away using these high-tech glasses.
The next phase, the officer, he just need to walk and to point on the cars, and there is a plate recognition from the application we done in the Google Glass that can find that car if it's wanted.
Police say they can also use facial recognition technology with the glasses to find missing or wanted people. All of the information gathered by the wearable tech, the cars and the 30,000 cameras of the town gets relayed through this control center. There are also drones permanently out surveying the city. Officers here say they have an almost unlimited budget.
As long as you have a case and you convince them that this will affect the safety, security level of the city, they are ready to spend.
There may be low crime in the UAE, but one person is killed in a road accident every 26 hours, mostly at high speed. In their work to bring that figure down, Dubai authorities clearly think their police should look the part.
Well, that brings us to the end of this week's show. Do take care and see you next time for more Middle East Matters.